Your deep, concentrated mindset centered around seeking truth and walking a path of enlightenment sets you apart drastically. So much so that the people you consider good friends no longer view the spectrum of reality as vivid as you do.
Have you ever felt like you're moving through a world that no longer understands you? Like conversations feel shallow, the noise of everyday life grates on your soul, and you can't quite explain why you're feeling out of step with everyone around you? This is more common than you think, and it's not a flaw. It's often the first quiet sign that you're walking a spiritual path that isn't meant to be crowded. The silence after awakening. Many traditions, from Buddhism to mystic Christianity to Sufi poetry, speak of a moment when the veil lifts, when a person begins to see through the surface of things. What used to seem important suddenly feels small. What used to keep your attention now barely touches your soul. This is the beginning of awakening. But with that awakening often comes something that no one warns you about: loneliness. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because transformation is, by nature, uncomfortable. When you outgrow your old world, you may not yet know where your new one is. And in that in-between space, things feel quiet, too quiet. Friends may drift, conversations may fall flat. You might find yourself sitting alone, not by choice, but by necessity. This isn't punishment, it's preparation. In Hindu tradition, the forest stage of life, vanaprastha, is a time when one leaves behind the distractions of society to move inward, to listen deeply, to prepare for truth. The world doesn't always make room for this, so those who choose it often feel as though they're walking against the current. But the current, in truth, was never going where your soul was meant to go. Even the story of Christ reflects this solitude. After his baptism, he didn't start preaching immediately. He withdrew into the desert for 40 days. No crowds, no miracles, just silence, temptation, and clarity. Whether you interpret that story spiritually or symbolically, the message is clear. Solitude isn't absence, it's sacred space. And sometimes, so is lack. People on a spiritual path often find themselves in financial hardship or material uncertainty, not because money is evil or undeserved, but because the systems that reward shallow success rarely honor deep wisdom. You may question your worth when the bank account is empty, but your value is not measured in currency. Your soul is not a business. Money is energy. It flows where attention goes. And sometimes, when you withdraw your energy from the external world to grow your inner world, the outer rewards pause. But that pause is not the end of the story. It's a reset, a realignment. The caterpillar doesn't collect resources in the cocoon. It dissolves. It lets go of its form. The wings come later. And for many, this stage, this dissolving, is where the idea of being chosen begins to make sense. Not chosen as in better, not chosen as in above others, but chosen as in tasked, called, whispered to by something deeper than words, something that lives in the space between your breaths. Being chosen means carrying a responsibility to see clearly in a world built on illusion. It means walking a path where most turn back. It means learning how to stay soft in a world that teaches you to harden, and that path can't always be shared with everyone. Some won't understand, some will mock, some will simply vanish. But this doesn't mean you're unlovable. It means you're being asked to become something new before re-entering the world again. This is how the spiral works. We move up only to return to the same places, but with deeper wisdom. So if you feel alone right now, or if life feels stripped bare, know this: the soil looks empty before a seed takes root. The night feels longest just before dawn. You're not alone in your aloneness, and you're not broken because you're broke. You are passing through the sacred silence between the old life and the new one. The silence is not punishment. It's the language of your soul preparing to speak. Let this be your invitation to stay, to listen, to trust that the discomfort is not the end, but the sacred middle. Have you ever noticed how, after a major inner change, things around you begin to fall away? People, jobs, even habits you never thought twice about. The energy shift is too strong for the old world to stay. That isn't a coincidence. It's one of the earliest signs of a chosen path. When something deep within you shifts, the outer world almost always reacts. Chosen ones experience this more intensely than most. Why? Because their energy changes faster, deeper, and more permanently. When your thoughts start rising out of fear and into clarity, when your actions stop serving your ego and begin serving truth, when you care. More about soul peace than public praise. The old world can't hold on to you anymore, and it doesn't try to. It lets go, but it's not always graceful. When your energy no longer matches the frequency of those around you, people pull away. It can feel personal, like betrayal, rejection, or abandonment. But often it's just energy doing what energy does. It separates what no longer belongs. In Taoist thought, this is natural. The Tao, or the way, isn't about clinging, it's about flow. It says that anything forced goes against nature. So when you're no longer forcing yourself to fit, the false connections fall away. And the silence that follows, that's your new space clearing itself for truth. But that silence can feel brutal at first. Friends might ghost you. Family may not understand you anymore. Old support systems dissolve. It's like being dropped into a void you never asked for. You start to question whether awakening was worth the cost. This is the secret pain of the chosen ones. Growth often looks like loss in the beginning. Your frequency is rising, but the people and places you once loved may still be vibrating at the old level. It doesn't mean you're better than them. It means you're becoming different. And sometimes that difference isn't compatible anymore. This also explains why money often disappears when you're awakening. Finances are tightly woven into your energy. If your energy shifts, but you keep trying to operate in old environments, the flow stops. Money dries up, not because you're being punished, but because the universe is cutting the cords that no longer align with your purpose. People think chosen ones are meant to have it all, but that's never how it begins. Think of a tuning fork. When struck, it hums with a certain pitch. If another fork nearby doesn't match, it won't resonate. But if another tuning fork shares the same frequency, it will start to vibrate, even without being touched. Chosen ones are like that first fork. Their energy strikes something new. It sets a vibration in motion. But first there's silence, that pause before resonance, that space before the match is found. You're not broken because the world around you has fallen silent. You're just in between frequencies. The people, purpose and prosperity meant for your new vibration haven't arrived yet. But they will. They always do. You just have to stay with yourself in the quiet. This reason, the overwhelming shift in energy, is why chosen ones are often forced into solitude. Not because they seek it, but because what once surrounded them cannot stay. And what is coming can't arrive until space is made. So if you find yourself wondering why you feel disconnected, why the people you love don't reach out anymore, or why your bank account keeps showing zero even though you're doing everything right, remember this. Your soul is no longer compatible with false patterns. You didn't lose the world. You shed the illusion of it, and in that shedding, something real is preparing to rise. The calling is invisible, and that's why it's so isolating. Have you ever tried to explain what you feel deep down, only to be met with confusion, blank stares, or polite nods that don't hide the disconnect? That's what it's like, carrying a spiritual calling that others can't see. It's not written on your skin. It doesn't show up in a resume. You can't point to it or prove it. And yet it pulses through your life like an undercurrent that never stops pulling. Chosen ones walk with something different inside them. Not better, just different. There's a sense that they were sent, not just born. A whisper of purpose they didn't choose but can't ignore. While others might move through life looking for comfort, approval, or structure, a chosen one feels something deeper tugging at them. Something that says, there's more, and you're meant to bring it into the world. But that sense of calling often comes with silence from the outside world. Because what do you say when people ask what you want to do, and all you feel is, I'm here to awaken something? It's not a job title, it's not a hobby, it's a fire that won't leave, and that fire makes normal conversations feel foreign. The surface-level stuff, gossip, competition, status games, starts to feel empty. Not because you're above it, but because it no longer fits inside the new framework your inner world is building. This is when the disconnection deepens. You might still show up at the same table in the same room, but spiritually, you're in another place entirely. And often, the more you try to explain it, the lonelier it gets. People say, you've changed, but they don't ask why. They see your shifts, but they don't sense your sacred burden. The old mystics, seers, and prophets all described this. In one form or another, the ache of carrying something the world wasn't ready to receive. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is told he must go into battle, not just because he's a warrior, but because his duty, his dharma, demands it. And even he resists. Even he questions. The calling doesn't always feel like a blessing. Sometimes it feels like exile. And this exile doesn't just affect your social life. It can show up in your finances too. When your soul starts shifting toward purpose, but you still live in a system designed for performance and predictability, your income can take a hit. You're not motivated by what motivates others anymore. You're not chasing numbers, titles, or rewards in the same way. That can look like failure from the outside, but inside it's something else. A quiet rebellion against a life that doesn't match your soul. This is also why chosen ones often feel early success in life, followed by an inexplicable drought. It's not that they're incapable, it's that what used to work no longer brings alignment. And when you're off alignment, even money doesn't want to stay. So while others move steadily along paths laid out for them, the chosen one feels like they're walking through fog, guided only by an inner compass that points to something they can't yet name. That invisibility is the test. Can you keep moving even when no one else sees the point? Can you trust the voice when no one else hears it? This is why chosen ones feel so alone, because their purpose is felt before it's seen. It's a seed planted in private, and most people only recognize the tree once it bears fruit. Until then, you're left with the soil, the water, and your own belief that something is growing, even when nothing has broken the surface yet. And in that waiting, faith becomes your only wealth. It's invisible, but it's priceless. Because when you don't yet have results, belief is what carries you. And belief, especially in something as personal and untouchable as a calling, can be the heaviest thing to carry when you're doing it alone. You may not be able to explain why you're here. You may not know how you'll survive doing the thing your soul whispers to you, but you're still here. Still listening. Still waking up with that hum under your ribs. And that's proof you were never making it up. Transformation demands a personal collapse first. Here is a truth that's rarely spoken. Before a chosen one can embody their full power, life will often dismantle everything they thought they were. This collapse isn't punishment, it's preparation, yet it's brutal in its precision. What's more, it's deeply misunderstood. From the outside, it can look like failure, laziness, even irresponsibility. But behind closed doors, it's a storm, a spiritual burning away of false identities, shallow motivations, and inherited expectations. At the root of this experience is something ancient. Across traditions, from Sufi mystics to Buddhist monks, there is a recurring theme. Before enlightenment, there is disintegration. The ego cannot hold the soul's expansion, so the structures built upon that ego, relationships, careers, financial frameworks, often begin to crack. This is where loneliness sets in, not because others leave, but because the person you used to be no longer feels real. You look in the mirror and recognize your face, but not your purpose. And as that old sense of self crumbles, the world doesn't know how to respond. You're not who you were, but you're not fully someone new. You're in between, and few people know how to meet you there. This collapse extends into physical reality too. Often, finances are one of the first places where this inner death shows up. It becomes impossible to maintain a job that asks you to betray yourself. Work driven by survival rather than sincerity begins to break down. And because the old self was tied to that income, the unraveling can feel like financial ruin. But underneath that ruin is a strange kind of freedom. When the systems that used to define your worth dissolve, a new kind of awareness arises. You begin to see where you've been trading your essence for approval, your time for comfort, your truth for stability, and once you see that, you can't unsee it. This in-between phase, where your old identity has died but your new embodiment hasn't taken form, is often marked by deep loneliness. Not social loneliness, but existential loneliness. A solitude that stretches beyond the physical. Even when people are around, you may feel like you're living in a parallel world, and in a way, you are. Many spiritual traditions speak of this collapse as a rite of passage. In the Christian mystic tradition, it's known as the dark night of the soul. In Hinduism, it's the destruction aspect of the Trimurti, Shiva, dissolving what must die before something new can be birthed. And in indigenous initiation rites, the initiate is often taken away from their community, stripped of their comforts, and plunged into unfamiliar terrain, not to be punished, but to be reborn. Chosen ones don't usually get this ceremony in modern life. Instead, it shows up as a breakdown that no one claps for, a period of confusion, isolation, and perceived failure that few understand because it isn't visible. It happens inside, where the deepest rebuilding occurs. During this period, you may feel unrelatable. You might try to explain the shift and get labeled as lost, depressed, or even crazy. But you're not broken. You're being remade. And like any deep transformation, it happens first in darkness, in silence, and in solitude. Financial struggle during this collapse isn't always about lack of skill or opportunity. More often it's about resistance. Not resistance from the world, but from your soul. It simply won't let you trade authenticity for comfort anymore. What used to be bearable, playing roles, faking connection, chasing money without purpose, now feels unbearable. And until a new path appears, you stand still in that sacred discomfort. If you're in this phase, it's important to know nothing is wrong with you. You're not failing. You're not falling behind. You're being cleared. You're being emptied so that what is truly yours can finally enter. But yes, it costs you first. That cost of comfort, of recognition, of income, of companionship is why so many chosen ones feel like they're walking a road no one else sees, because they are. They are walking through fire not to be destroyed, but to be purified. And while it might feel like everything has been taken from you, the truth is this. What's being removed are the pieces that could never carry your full light. Their gifts are delayed on purpose. Why is it that a chosen one's most powerful abilities seem to arrive late, often after long years of suffering or obscurity? It's not because they are forgotten. It's not because they are doing something wrong. It's because delay is part of their design. Think about a seed. It holds an entire tree within it, its structure, its fruit, its purpose. But none of that can emerge without the right season. If that seed is forced to sprout too soon, it dies. The same is true for those who are born with a spiritual or energetic purpose. Their talents, insights, and intuitive strengths are often hidden, even from themselves, until they can carry them with maturity, humility, and discernment. This delay is often misread as failure or punishment. Chosen ones might look around and see people moving ahead, building successful careers, living what appears to be fulfilling lives. Meanwhile, they feel stuck, uncertain of where to go or what to offer the world. But this stuckness is not stagnation, it's incubation, a sacred kind of slowness designed to make sure the gifts they carry don't come into the world prematurely. In ancient traditions, spiritual initiates often underwent long periods of waiting, sometimes years of silence, study, or withdrawal, before they were allowed to teach, lead, or heal. This wasn't elitism, it was wisdom. Power without depth becomes dangerous. Insight without grounding turns into illusion. And so, chosen ones are held back, not because they aren't ready to serve, but because their service must be pure. And this delay, this hidden waiting, often contributes to the feeling of being alone or broke. Without outward validation or results, the chosen one might question their value. They may work jobs that don't reflect their gifts, struggle to find income that aligns with their soul, or feel invisible in a world that seems to reward noise more than depth. But what they often don't see is that they are being protected. If their energy were fully released before they had faced certain truths about themselves, about human nature, about the illusions of control, they might misuse it. Not out of malice, but out of immaturity. Spiritual power doesn't just heal, it reveals. And unless one has learned how to hold discomfort, confrontation, and shadow without collapsing, their gifts can turn into burdens. So the universe waits. It hides their potential under layers of confusion, quietness, and solitude. Not to crush them, but to prepare them. And preparation takes many forms. Sometimes it looks like silence. Sometimes it feels like rejection. Often it looks like everyone else being seen while you are not. But during this time, something deeper is happening. The soul is learning how to hold truth without needing recognition. The heart is learning how to stay soft without needing approval. The mind is learning how to speak with clarity, without needing applause. Eventually the gifts do emerge, but by then the chosen one is no longer hungry for status. They're not chasing influence. They've tasted the bitterness of ego and seen what it costs. Now they offer their gifts not to impress, but to uplift, not to be worshipped, but to serve. And perhaps that's the ultimate purpose of the delay. It separates the desire to shine from the desire to guide. The world doesn't need more performers. It needs mirrors. And chosen ones, once seasoned by silence and softened by struggle, become exactly that. So if your talents seem late in blooming, if your ideas remain unmanifested, your voice unheard, your gifts still invisible, remember this: the most powerful trees take the longest to root. And when they rise, they don't just offer fruit, they offer shelter, clarity, and strength. You are not being forgotten. You are being fortified. Their energy challenges collective comfort. Have you ever noticed how, in some rooms, your very presence changes the tone, even before you say a word? It's not arrogance, it's not ego, it's energy. A chosen one doesn't just walk in, they disrupt. Not with intention to cause harm or chaos, but because their very frequency challenges what others are desperately trying to maintain: comfort, denial, normalcy. You see, a chosen one's energy is not neutral, it's charged. It's often the result of inner depth, past pain, and relentless transformation. And when that kind of frequency enters a space, it doesn't blend, it confronts. It stirs what others have buried. It makes silence loud. It makes surface conversations feel hollow. It makes avoidance feel exposed. This is one of the core reasons why chosen ones often feel uninvited, not by explicit rejection, but by subtle emotional pushback, avoidance, or social distance. People sense something in you that they can't name but don't want to feel. You mirror what they've repressed. You reflect the inner work they haven't done. And this is not about moral superiority, it's about resonance. Your vibration speaks a language not everyone is ready to hear, and so you're avoided. Not because you are broken, but because you activate discomfort. Not because you're negative, but because your energy is unfiltered. In a world obsessed with distraction and performance, that kind of rawness is seen as threatening. This rejection or distance can manifest as aloneness, but it's not personal, it's energetic. People unconsciously distance themselves from what they aren't ready to process. And when your frequency naturally encourages others to look deeper, to question more, to sit in their own stillness, many will flee. This also explains why chosen ones often struggle financially, not because they lack talent or intelligence, but because their essence doesn't align with superficial systems. When you're wired to challenge illusion, you won't thrive in environments that reward it. When you're meant to shift consciousness, you won't fit into structures built on convenience and conformity. And so your presence, no matter how loving or soft, can feel loud to others. You may be told you're too intense, too sensitive, too deep, or too serious. These aren't flaws. They're symptoms of your frequency colliding with environments that can't hold it. In ancient shamanic cultures, it was understood that the healer or visionary was often outside the village, not in its center. Not because they were outcasts, but because their vibration was different. They weren't feared, but respected from a distance. Only those who were ready for initiation would approach them. This distance allowed their energy to remain unpolluted. It also helped them hear more clearly the messages others couldn't. Today, that understanding is mostly lost. Instead of revering sensitivity, we pathologize it. Instead of honoring intensity, we label it as too much. Instead of encouraging inner transformation, we chase outward achievement. And so chosen ones, especially in early stages, often misread their isolation as a flaw rather than a sign of their frequency. You may find yourself in rooms where your words land too heavy, where your silence is misinterpreted, where your ideas are too ahead of their time. This isn't a mistake, it's calibration. Your presence forces a choice, growth or retreat, and most will unconsciously choose retreat, at least at first. But don't dim yourself to stay included. Don't shrink to soothe collective discomfort. Your energy isn't a mistake, it's a compass. The right ones will feel it and follow it. The rest will misunderstand it, and that's okay. You're not meant to be everywhere. You're meant to be true. And the cost of that truth is often temporary solitude. But trust this, the more you stay aligned, the more you'll attract those who speak your frequency fluently. Not just clients or friends, but true companions of the path. Until then, the silence is sacred. The space is preparing you, and your frequency is quietly reshaping the world, even if it doesn't clap for you while you do it. They are wired for truth, not trend. Chosen ones are not pulled by the same magnets as most people. They do not chase applause, popularity, or the shiny masks that trend in society. Their attention is drawn not toward what is fashionable, but toward what is real. And in a world built on surface validation, that focus can look like failure, especially when measured by conventional metrics. They do not seek to impress, they seek to express. And what they express often doesn't follow what's being celebrated at the time. This can be confusing, even painful, because it means their work, their presence, their voice may not receive immediate approval or reward. The systems that amplify success tend to favor the predictable, the digestible, the repeatable, but the chosen one disrupts that pattern. Their ideas are often misunderstood because they come too early. Their perspective isn't meant to trend, it's meant to transform. But transformation is a slower fire. It doesn't catch like a spark. It moves through deep roots, and those who aren't ready for it may ignore, resist, or reject it. This often results in chosen ones struggling to find footing in industries, relationships, or communities that value polish over depth. They are not wired to follow the blueprint that leads to material comfort if it comes at the cost of spiritual alignment. So they pause, wander, or even struggle, not because they are lost, but because they refuse to walk a false path. Think of artists who only became recognized long after their death. Think of philosophers whose ideas were dismissed in their lifetime, but later shook entire civilizations. Think of prophets, mystics, and visionaries who were silenced because their truth sounded like noise to ears that weren't ready. The chosen one walks this lineage, and that walk is rarely paved in gold. Financial hardship often comes not from lack of ability, but from a refusal to compromise. They won't sell what they don't believe in. They won't perform just to fit in. They won't package their gift in a way that strips it of its soul, and because of this, they are often overlooked in systems that reward image over integrity. This can feel like a curse, but in truth, it's a refining fire. It's how authenticity protects itself, because when you refuse to bow to the shallow, you carve space for something timeless. And though the rewards may be delayed, they are far more lasting than anything that can be gained by pretending. The chosen one's loyalty is to something higher than acceptance. They are loyal to the soul. That loyalty isn't always visible, and it certainly isn't always profitable, at least not in the beginning. But it builds something money can't buy: peace, a clear inner compass, a connection to something greater than external success. And slowly, sometimes painfully, the universe rearranges to meet that loyalty. Resources appear, allies show up. Opportunities form not from force but from alignment. Not by chasing, but by standing still in truth. But until that alignment is full, there will be spaces where the chosen one feels left out. Their vision will not be mirrored, their values will feel rare, and their bank account may not reflect the depth of their work. This is the valley between worlds, the space between who they are and what the world currently values. The temptation will be to bend, to follow what's working for others, to twist their gift into something more palatable. But that detour always leads to spiritual disconnection, and chosen ones can't survive there. Their system short-circuits when the soul is silenced. They know this, which is why they often walk away from lucrative but hollow paths, even if it means walking into uncertainty. So if you've ever felt the tension between what you could do to succeed and what your spirit will actually allow, you're not alone. That resistance is part of the path. It's proof you haven't traded truth for trend. And while that resistance might feel like failure, it's actually a sign you're on the edge of something sacred. Stay there, because when you hold your frequency long enough, it becomes magnetic. And though the world may take its time to catch up, it always does. The truth never stays buried forever. They are guardians of energy, not collectors of attention. There is a quiet truth that often goes unnoticed. Chosen ones do not scatter their energy, they guard it. They are not built to chase after attention or surround themselves with endless noise. Instead, they are designed to carry light silently, intentionally, and without dilution. While many seek to be everywhere, doing everything and being seen by everyone, the chosen one often retreats, not because they're afraid, but because they're aware. They know that every interaction, every environment, every person they allow into their space has the power to shape or drain their energy. And this energy is not ordinary. It's precise, refined, potent. It can shift the mood of a room, spark an awakening in someone just by presence, or stir deep emotion with a simple word. Because of that, chosen ones cannot afford to give it away carelessly. They are selective, even if it means being misunderstood. They sense when too many demands pull at their spirit, and they withdraw, not out of weakness, but out of preservation. In a world that rewards exposure and constant output, this restraint looks like failure. It looks like isolation. But what's really happening is refinement, conservation, honoring the power within. Many people build wealth through constant production, constant connection, constant availability. But the chosen one isn't built for that cycle. Their system shuts down when they give more than they regenerate. So instead of pushing forward, they pause. Instead of shouting, they whisper. And in that stillness, something sacred happens. They start to feel again. They listen deeper. They notice the subtle movements of the universe that others miss in the rush. This instinctive withdrawal often leads them into solitude, not because they're antisocial, but because they need space to hear what others are too busy to notice. They notice the shift in someone's energy before a word is spoken. They feel the weight in silence before a storm arrives. They live by inner timing, not external pressure. But the world doesn't always understand this kind of rhythm. It doesn't pay well for stillness. It doesn't value energy held in reserve. So chosen ones may appear to fall behind in material terms. They may seem out of sync with the hustle. But what's happening underneath is deeper than currency. It's spiritual currency building in silence. They are learning not to chase, not to please, not to perform. They are learning to become a force that draws things in, not out of ego, but out of alignment. And that takes time. It takes seasons of being unseen, of being questioned, of being doubted. But that season is not a punishment. It is protection. Until they've learned to fully steward their energy, the universe shields them from distractions disguised as blessings. And once that stewardship becomes second nature, the chosen one no longer needs to prove themselves. Their life begins to reflect what they've always known deep down, that real power doesn't announce itself, it simply arrives. So if you feel alone, not because you're unloved, but because your spirit can no longer tolerate empty noise, trust that. If your bank account doesn't reflect your inner richness yet, but you refuse to sell your soul, honor that. If your path is quieter, slower, but deeply rooted, stay with it. Because chosen ones are not meant to follow the world. They are meant to remind it of what it forgot. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching.